I have quite a bit of information here to go over. We have the Wall Street Journal suffered an outage. Also, United Airlines had some sort of a problem yesterday. And of course, the New York Stock Exchange, around the same time that the Wall Street Journal was suffering these problems, these technical glitches or technical problems, they all occurred together. And there's information on there that all this disinformation that it could be North Korea, whoever, all these people. I mean, there's a lot of candidates, China. But again, I think what they're doing is they just want to test what's going on and how everything. The subways stopped. In New York, all around the same time, all on the same day. All these things occurred. And yeah, you can really speculate quite a bit on this, but those are an awful lot. I mean, truthfully, events can happen like this. Coincidences do occur. Rarely, because I believe there are no coincidences. I think that everything pretty much that happens for a reason, whether that's something that's been planned or an attack or whatever it is. In this case, we've got a lot of problems. China is heading towards a market crash. They're putting different things into place to protect the market there. They're banning stock sales by major shareholders for 6 months. So that tells you something. Savings are, of course, at risk, as they are in Greece, as they continue to be slaves to these IMF world bankers. Putin and Russia and the Chinese have made a deal. They're going to overcome this difficulty together. They're forming BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and Singapore, who have agreed to, they're working on putting a currency together for themselves to trade with one another. Soros is getting the boot from the Russians. And we have some interesting things going on. Then we have all the social issues that are inflaming the world. The Confederate flag is causing such outrage, it's unbelievable. And D.C. residents now say that they want the Jefferson Memorial taken down and renamed Washington. This is getting out of control. America is being demoralized and has been for many, many years. It's Marxist-Leninist propaganda. They are the Salinsky school. I mean, Obama, Clinton, and this whole. Look at the kids today. I mean, it's unbelievable. They're just not paying any attention. Everything goes. It's all about sex, and looks, and really not well behaved, and parents are unattentive. I don't know what's going on, but I remember things being a lot different when I was my son's age, and he's 16. He's a good kid, thank the Lord. He's a good kid. God bless him. And he's got a head on his shoulders. Most of these kids just don't. I don't understand. If it's the parents, they're dumbed down too by this communist indoctrination, this socialism. Socialism is the only way. And they just forget about the fact that socialism and communism is responsible for the deaths of over 100 million people. Remember, Hitler was a socialist. He hated socialists because they weren't his type of socialist, but he was a socialist, the National Socialist Party, remember? The Nazis. So Ariana Grande is accused of licking donuts at a shop and says, "I hate America." I mean, meanwhile, she's making millions of dollars. Well, that's because her checks are written by multinationalists. They don't see the borders anyway. They just want to control the world under their one world system, and it's coming, and it's coming every day, and it's like a full speed ahead. They don't necessarily call it the New World Order anymore because it's just everyone knows what that is, so they can't keep saying New World Order. They've moved away from that. Biden said it recently, not too long ago. I mean, they'll slip it in here and there, but they'll call it something else, the New Order, or a the type of order we wish to see, or some sort of using the word order or using the word democracy, which, again, America is not a democracy. I'm just tired of hearing them say this, American democracy. We're not a democracy. We are a republic that has democratic principles. There's very different. It's run by laws and gives individual rights. The government is there to protect the rights of the people. It's just been so corroded from that, and we're all suffering from it. We would all have more money in the bank, ladies and gentlemen, if we could just stop this system. Every single one of us. If you're making $30,000 a year, it'd be like you're making $50,000 a year. If we can get these people out of the criminals, out of the government, out of our hair, and tax the corporations as it was intended initially, and have tariffs and do this thing the way that it was. Go back to a constitutional republic. And they say, oh, these flat earthers going back to caveman times. Why don't we just do that? They're all in this yelling because they want to keep their system because it's working so well for them, giving the wealth to the few and leaving the masses with nothing. This has been going on. I don't have to remind you that this has been going on through Republican administrations, through Democratic administrations, going back to Ronald Reagan.
Process of developing a whole series of techniques which will enable the controlling oligarchy to get people actually to love their servitude. People can be made to enjoy a state of affairs which, by any decent standard, they ought not to enjoy.
Perhaps you had better start from the beginning.
Share the truth. Truth Talk News on YouTube and HowardNewman.com. Listen live Thursdays 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Rich are getting richer. The poor are getting poorer. And the middle class is vanishing. Truth Talk News, where news, the mainstream need more than that. All they do is they just give them. It's like literally like we're cattle. They put some more food in the trough for the slaves for the cattle to be fattened up before they slaughter them. And as soon as these clowns can get a hold of everything, and they're far from clowns actually, brilliant men, and they know it, and they think that they're the wisest of the wise, and that they alone possess, their minds alone. Anyone that has the intellect of theirs belongs to them. And they get them, they put them in places of highest power, and they use them. We are just useless eaters, cattle. Stakes on the table by choice and consent. Like animals that do not have intellect, people that have but do not use their intellect are no different than animals that have no intellect, cannot think, and therefore are stakes on the table by choice and consent. That's from the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, Bilderberg Group, 1979. Piece, the paper that was put out, a document that was given to all the members, and it plotted the plans for the next. First of all, it plotted the 25-year history up until then, since the first Bilderberg Group meeting, as they're moving into this world government and this controlled economy. It's happening. Just because you love your Republican person and he's saying, "Oh, it's not happening," or just because you love your Democratic person, whoever it is. You have been mind controlled to accept these people and to love these people like family members. I mean, they can't be doing it wrong. And meanwhile, they're getting rich. Everyone else is getting poor. Every president that leaves the office ends up making $10 million that year. And then $10 million, now they're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And what did they do? Oh, they do so much for charity. They say they give money to charity, but it really never gets there. It's always eaten up by some other way. They put it into their foundations, their tax-exempt foundations that fund all of this crap to keep their lie going. To keep it going, to keep this system going. So they're absolutely using every method under the sun to change this country in every possible way, to transform it, as Obama said, to fundamentally transform America. And it's happening. It's happening right before our eyes. Homelessness and empty stores are becoming the new normal in New York City. LA's got a crime surge. People are up at late at night Googling porn, lonely, and suicide. Those are the top searches. Posters threatening gays with death are appearing in Turkish capitals and other Muslim countries. This whole thing is unbelievable. It is such a perfect storm of events and chaos and mayhem. You've got these radical Islamists that hate gays, but of course the gays are like, we can't hurt, it's not the Muslims. But they're Muslim, okay? And there are very good Muslims out there, okay? Just like there are murderous, looks like the mafia. They were all Catholics, right? They're killers. They're bad types of all. But my point is that these people are really radicalized as a religious point of view and pose a tremendous threat to us on top of the New World Order. And their hierarchy is controlled by the same Masonic forces. If you know, the Shriners, of course, have this whole thing with Islam. There's a big connection to Islam and the Roshaniya Illuminati. Research all this stuff. It's true. I don't do this for my health. I'm telling you, the information I give to you is true. And the people that have been, researching this information and looking for it and finding their own truth come back and they share it with others. Because these little videos I make I'm up to 100,000 views a month, getting them out there. Over 1 million views on both channels, and almost 2 million views. Just because they realize it's true. And wow, we got to get this information out because it is true. Anything that you heard that you didn't believe or thought I'm nuts or whatever, listen, just take it. It's a recording. You can stop it, go back. You could read some of the print here that I leave usually on the backgrounds because it's important. You should all look at that. Because what we have here is an insane system that's designed to stop entrepreneurship of the common man, to limit them, to put them into this cradle-to-grave, cookie-cutter world that they're trying to create. This systematic world of, indoctrination, college to further indoctrinate and place into the society. And most of those degrees are in worthlessness, and they'll end up with huge debts. That's another huge scam, the college scam. You could spend a week talking about that, unless you're studying, engineering, or you're studying to be a doctor or an attorney. College for the most part isn't really going to help you in this world where in 10 years, 30% of the jobs that people are doing will be replaced, including the jobs of surgeons. Look that up. That's Reuters. That's right. 10 years. So they're already doing it. I was watching yesterday. It was unbelievable. Did you ever see the facility for Amazon, or one of their facilities where they process the packages? It's unbelievable what they have, their system. They use these little robots. They're like little robots that can lift 750 pounds, and they look like a bathroom scale. And they drive around, they zooming around this place, and they know exactly where everything is. And they find it, pull it out, pull it back, and then the person actually pulls it out of the box and pulls it out of the shelf and puts it into the box and puts it on a conveyor belt. It's like unbelievable, but they won't need that person pretty soon. They'll figure out a way to get rid of him too, and his benefits and his complaints and everything else. You see, with all honesty, is that the way to make it in this world is to do it on your own. The only way you're really going to fall out of this matrix, unless you're going to be part of, looking for some city job or something like that, it's going to be a dead end. There's not going to be any money for these type of things in the future. What was is no longer. What was traditional for my father's generation and his father's generation is no longer traditional for my son's generation, that's for sure. The opportunities are not the same. Elimination of work, and there'll be new technologies, new innovations, right? Well, maybe, but I don't think so. I don't think it's gonna. I think we're working towards, again, this huge. The masses are being dumbed down. The school, the educational system in this country, Common Core. Having my son been in Common Core now, he went to Catholic school, and for up to 8th grade. And then in 9th grade, he started high school, the regular high school, with the Common Core, and it was stuff that he learned 2 years earlier, by the way. And it's indoctrination. He even challenged one of his teachers and called them a communist. And I was called to school, and I said, well, are you? And the woman couldn't, you probably are, but you don't realize it. I didn't say anything, but I shocked her, and, that was an interesting situation. But it's truth, because the system is really, really designed to indoctrinate and create a certain way of thinking. And they want you to be a certain way. They want to basically create an immoral society, because immoral societies can be controlled in such a way where they can imprisonment, and they can have all sorts of other problems. That's why they're letting all these people come across the border, because it was just determined recently that I believe 31% of I think I have the stat here someplace. Yeah, illegal aliens account for 37% of federal sentences. That's a tremendous amount, and they're illegal aliens. They're not even here for, so it's part of feeding the system, feeding this prison system, the penal system. The judicial system is so corrupt that we now know that Holder, the criminal Holder, is now, what do you think he's doing? He's going back to working for the criminal bankers. I mean, it's such a, he runs fast and furious. That whole gun running operation, the money probably gets siphoned up to the Illuminati. Holder triumphantly returns to law firm that lobbies for banks. There you go. So that's what he's doing. So this is the world we're living in. And here's what it is. We'd like to think that we live in the land of the free, but the truth is that our lives and our businesses are actually tightly constrained by millions of rules and regulations. Today, there is a license for just about every business activity. In fact, in some areas of the country, you need a degree and multiple licenses before you can even submit an application for permission to start certain businesses. And if you want to actually hire some people for your business, the paperwork nightmare gets even worse. It truly is a wonder that anyone in America is still willing to start a business from scratch and hire employees. The truth is that the business environment in the United States is now so incredibly toxic that millions of Americans have simply given up and don't even try to work within the system anymore. Today, the U.S. government has an alphabet agency for just about everything. The nanny state feels like it has to watch, track, and tightly control virtually everything that we do. The Federal Register is the main source of regulations for the U.S. government, ladies and gentlemen. In 1936, the number of pages contained in the Federal Register was about 2,600. Do you know that today the Federal Register is over 80,000 pages long? 80,000 pages long. Almost 40 times. It's just one example of how bad things have gotten. But it's not just the federal government that's rammed thousands of ridiculous regulations down our throats. The truth is that in many cases, state and local governments are far worse. We have become a nation that is run and dominated by bureaucrats. Yes, there always must be rules in society. But we've gotten to the point where there are so many millions of rules that the game has become unplayable. You're committing a crime every day and don't even know it. It's designed to keep us enslaved, to make it more difficult for us to do everything, to have a comfortable retirement, to get our kids through school. It's hard work to pay for a child's education. It's hard work to pay your bills, to make a mortgage payment. And the people that we're talking about that are stealing our money and our wealth by these sweetheart trade deals and these sweetheart nepotism appointments where everyone on the top is getting wealthy and leaving fuck the rest of the world. They've been doing this for ages, but now the greed level is just to the top. And they're pulling it off. These criminals have hijacked our governments, local and municipal and everything. You must know your local town. There's got to be, if you live in a smaller city, you probably do. Even if you're in a larger city, you see them on television. But there's always some sort of corruption. I mean, and bad stuff going on. And it's systematic. It's systemic. And then at the top, there's an elite group, sort of like you can call them the Godfather, or you want to call what they call themselves are the Olympians. The Olympians, that's right. And they wet their beak on everything. And they're controlling it all, policy and procedure. Make no mistake about it. So the U.S. growth forecast was chopped to zero, and they keep talking about how things are so wonderful, right? Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta reported its forecast for gross domestic product dropped to zero back in April, and that means nothing, no growth at all. And then they start saying that the growth is up, and now it's 1.9%. February 2nd, the growth forecast of 1.9, and that changed in net because of net exports, and they were supposed to be down, but by March they had dropped to 40 billion negative. So non-residential construction spending was initially forecast to drop by 1.5%, and is forecast to be down by 22.5%. So they have this, like, I mean, the growth is anemic. It's anemic it's not even really anemic. It's flatline. It's been a flatline for years. And there's all of these records that they put out that, oh, the economy is better than it was, and unemployment is lower than it was, and there's improvements, but nobody's making any money. There's no improvements to the income. And we're sitting on a tremendous situation with the stock market being overvalued, and it's going to crash. It's going to crash again, and people's retirements are going to get hurt again. And guess who wins? Remember, money doesn't vanish, ladies and gentlemen. It simply changes hands. It goes somewhere else. When you lose it, it goes somewhere else. It doesn't go into the black hole void. Okay? Think about that. The next time you accept one of these lies as, well, you know, it's just the market. It's just the market. When the market is manipulated and controlled, and bubbles are created and burst with inside information, the people know what's going to fall, and they can create puts on these stocks and other clever ways of short selling and all this other stuff with the stock market. I wasn't a stockbroker, but I had a Series 6 license, so I understand it pretty well. And yeah, they could be doing some really, really cool things to make a lot of money, and the rest of us suffer. And that's what's happened because we see it. They bailed out the banks instead of the banks really just losing. I mean, why did we have to pay all the banks out? Let them fucking pay for it. They broke it. They have to buy it. No, because we're slaves. Because the owners that own these criminal politicians that are their puppets, that pitch for them, oh my God, they get Madison Avenue attention and slickness and Hollywood shine. They're seen with movie stars, and they come on Letterman when he was still on. They'll go on the other guy. So there's a lot of correlations here between what happened to the fall of Rome and America. As Rome was under attack from outside forces, it was also crumbling from within thanks to a severe financial crisis. Constant wars and overspending, does this sound familiar, had significantly lightened imperial coffers, and oppressive taxation and inflation had widened the gap between rich and poor. Does that sound familiar? In the hopes of avoiding the taxman, many members of the wealthy classes even had to fled to the countryside and set up independent fiefdoms. Does that sound familiar? You know, last year was the most people that ever left this country, and now they're imposing a fee. If you want to leave the country, if you want to, like, you know, I'm just going to move out, I'm leaving America. Okay? They charge you like $35,000 or something like that because so many people are doing it. That's got to tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. It's not good. At the same time, the empire was rocked by a labor deficit, which means there was no work, which is what we have here. No good work. $10 an hour jobs, no real jobs, because the kids are too dumbed down. The people are just dumbed down. They don't have the high-tech skills that are required for this growing technology revolution that's going on. No, they say it. They tell it all the time. There's not enough people doing it. Not enough people going into that. Yeah. So, not enough engineers. You know. So if you want to write your ticket, be an engineer. But no, people are, you know, getting, you know, master's degrees in becoming baristas at Starbucks. So Rome's economy depended on slaves to till its field and work as craftsmen, and its military might had traditionally provided a fresh influx of conquered peoples to put to work. They had slaves. But when expansion ground to a halt in the 2nd century, Rome's supply of slaves and other war treasures began to dry up. A further blow came in the 5th century when the Vandals claimed North Africa and began disrupting the empire's trade by prowling the Mediterranean as pirates. Now we have all these pirates going on out there. You know, they happen all the time. And there are plenty of slaves, by the way. Many slaves. Slavery is not dead by any means. Sexual slavery and true slavery, it's happening. China. Slavery in China, lots of that. All of these totalitarian socialist countries have slavery. Look it up. So there's one of the correlations. The collapse of the middle class. In the period just before Rome's fall, the Roman middle class was crushed, destroyed by cheap overseas slave labor. In our own day, we've witnessed rising income inequality, a stagnating middle class, and the loss of American jobs overseas to workers who are paid less and have fewer rights. So what we have here is a very, very similar correlation to what occurred in Rome. We also have this continuous war that just never stops. There's always some sort of conflict and expense that has to be done. We have Homeland Security preparing for something terrible because they're doing Jade Helm exercises for the military across the country right now. We're having it in all of the states that are marked as hostile states happen to be gun rights states and Bible states, things like that. Really bad. Texas, Arizona, lower Southern California, and they're doing these other states. I think it's 7 states or 8 states, and it's happening. They're doing it. They're infiltrating communities, and that's part of the assignment is to infiltrate communities and be able to create intelligence networks inside those communities. But it's a drill. It's just so that they can go and fight somewhere else and do that, wherever the New World Order wants to send them next. Okay, you have the arrival of the Huns and the migration of the barbarian tribes. That's the Islamic extremists. That's what I call them. That's the correlation between Rome and now. The Christianity and loss of traditional values. The decline of Rome dovetailed with the spread of Christianity, if you can understand how that happened. And Rome was very pagan and very, very debaucherous. And the debauchery actually was depraved and demented, torturous, horrible. I don't know. Could use a whole bunch of different words to describe the evil of Rome. I mean, Rome was truly evil at that point. One could argue that the Roman Empire was evil. One could argue that the American Empire is evil, because we certainly have an empire. Now it's controlled by these globalists, but we are the muscle. We get things done. It's like war is a racket, like Smedley Butler. Read that book, great book. I'll put a link on the website on howardnema.com so you can check that out. It's an amazing book. There's an audio version of it that's pretty good too, so you can listen to it like when you're driving or something. You can do that here too. You can check out all my stuff is at howardnema.com. You can also go to YouTube. Just Google Truth Talk News. Plenty of information. Go to Truth Talk News or howardnema.com. There's a lot more, and there's a lot to talk about. With all the debauchery, Miley Cyrus sticking her ass in people's face and simulating oral sex, and all the satanic imagery with Beyonce and Madonna and Jay-Z and all of these Luciferians. They relish in this, taking good souls and selling them out. So really, it is truly like a Faustian thing, like Robert Johnson, selling your soul. Because nobody will ever really get to that level unless they can somehow find the funds to the millions and millions and millions of dollars required to promote something to that level. That's the only way it could happen. So that's why these big companies, which are owned by, remember, the entire mass media that we know and love is owned by 6 corporations. I went following into this a previous piece, and I talk about this on air all the time, that 147 companies own 44,000, almost 900 companies that we do business with every day, multinational companies that we buy our products from, all of our products from, the majority. These are the largest multinational corporations that we do business with worldwide. 44,000 plus are owned by 147 companies, and those 147 companies are mostly owned by central banks and extremely wealthy individuals and royalty. Look it up, it's true. Link to that can also be found at howardnameth.com. Now, the Rockefellers, the family was tasked with a big chunk of this America, of the transformation of America. They are behind the Council on Foreign Relations, which takes its instructions from Chatham House, which was also known as the Royal Institute of International Affairs. The Royal Institute of International Affairs is in London. That's why we have the Rhodes Scholarship. Cecil Rhodes, a group called the Milner Group, also known as they don't have a name, so they call them the Milner's Group or the Milner's Kindergarten. And these are all bankers and industrialists working to basically foister up and control the British Empire, and its spread. So a lot of things have happened. They've become in the past. You think of the British Empire. Oh, it fell, right? Well, it just changed form. It didn't really fall. Unlike Rome, which fell, and America that's falling, the British Empire sort of went underground as far as its power structure and the money sources behind it. And you do have, they still have a vast control of Australia, Canada, etc. Cecil Rhodes, by the way, earned his fortune, created the Rhodes Scholarship, and the secret society, which is exactly that, to create a one world system that they would control through this royal, through the British Crown, and America is a part of it. But their view is that we must be brought down to size with the rest of the world. That's why they're intentionally doing this to us. And it goes very deep. On May 31st, speaking in Istanbul, Turkey, at a conference organized by the Rockefellers, Henry Kissinger alluded to the pattern of crisis, stating that the outcome in Iraq, remember this is in 2007, will depend on something that a German philosopher, Immanuel Kant, said. Someday there will be universal peace. The only question is whether it comes through human insight or whether it comes about through a series of catastrophes of such a magnitude that people are so exhausted that they have no other choice. And that's where we're moving. The utopian ideals of a world civilization and a world government have always existed, no matter how well-meaning and egalitarian they may sound. History has shown us that a centralized system almost always leads to corruption and abuse of power. Given the actions of the Rockefeller family in providing support to the Bolshevik Revolution, their instrumental role in the spread of the eugenics policies to Nazi Germany, and David Rockefeller's proud exclamation, quote, "Some believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that is the charge, I stand guilty, and I am proud of it." End quote. It would seem that the solution of world government is rising out of crises that the proponents of such a system are fostering. Internationalism must first be a state of mind, an ideal, a chivalry, a religion, before it can be a reality and a system. Samuel Zane Batten, The New World Order, 1919. The Rockefeller family while they are by no means the only major players in world affairs, have contributed large amounts of resources to the creation of world government. They actually donated the land. John D. Rockefeller donated the land where the United Nations sits in New York City. They wanted to make sure that they had it in bedrock here, since the first attempt at the world government, which was with the League of Nations, failed. Utilizing vast monetary resources which were initially amassed by the oil empire of John D. Rockefeller Sr., their efforts have gone into nearly every area of significance. From politics, media, to education, the Rockefellers are a force to be reckoned with. One vitally important and often overlooked method of influence that the Rockefellers have is the realm of the church and religion. It comes as little surprise, given their long-term goal of world government, that the Rockefeller family would approve of and support a societal outlook favorable to globalism. The use of religion is one method that, in Rockefeller's eyes, looked to be a promising means of accomplishing this goal. Early programs, such as the Interchurch World Movement, focused on the maintenance of harmonious relations between people in America's growing industrial sector. Later endeavors, such as the World Council of Churches, would trend towards being global in nature, with goals of moving beyond that of simply maintaining class stability in America to elimination of national sovereignty and world governance. Then there is the Federal Council of Churches. Just as the Interchurch World Movement was presented to the churches as a solution to problems facing the globe after the First World War, the Federal Council of Churches, FCC, presented its own solution in the early 1940s for a program for a just and durable peace upon the end of World War II. Not surprisingly, the Federal Council of Churches, which was merged with the National Council of Churches in 1950, received significant funding from John D. Rockefeller Jr. Using a similar corporate structure of churches that the Interchurch World Movement first pioneered, the program developed several agendas for churches to adopt, with world government named as the ultimate goal. As reported by Time in 1942, these are the high spots of organized U.S. Protestant super Protestant new program for a just and durable peace after World War II. Ultimately, a world government of delegated powers, complete abandonment of U.S. isolationism, strong immediate limitations on national sovereignty, international control of all armies and navies. Do you hear this? 1942. A universal system of money, so planned as to prevent inflation and deflation. Right. Worldwide freedom of immigration. Progressive elimination of all tariff and quota restrictions on world trade. Autonomy for all subjects and colonial peoples, with much better treatment for Negroes in the U.S. No punitive reparations, no humiliating decrees of war guilt, no arbitrary dismemberment of nations. A democratically controlled international bank to make developmental capital available in all parts of the world without the predatory and imperialistic aftermath so characteristic of large-scale private and government loans. The program was adopted by 375 appointed representatives of 30-odd denominations called together at Ohio Wesleyan University by the Federal Council of Churches. The Federal Council of Churches program, as Time reports, was strikingly similar to Samuel Zane Baton's New World Order. The ultimate goal was, quote, a duly constituted world government of delegated powers, an international legislative body, an international court with adequate jurisdiction, international administrative bodies with necessary powers, and adequate international policies and provisions for enforcing its worldwide economic authority. So they work in generations the way they make their things, but right now a lot of things are happening. And they've planned this many years ago, what's going on in the world today. During the 1961 Third Assembly of the World Council of Churches in New Delhi, India, the agenda of world government and a new international order was once again revealed. Interdependence, surrender of national sovereignty, and the regional institutions were all themes of the Third Assembly. Representatives from churches around the world were present. And so it goes. And so it goes. We have the Pope, the New World Order Pope, talking about, well, they all talk about world government. They all talk about world order, world economic order, making things fair. This Pope doesn't want you to worry about gay marriage so much. He doesn't want you to put too much emphasis on abortion. This Jesuit Pope. this Luciferian false prophet. Very interesting. Very interesting. I'm sure you'll agree. This is the New World Order. We're in it. And I would be remiss not to mention about Pope Francis being involved in the kidnapping controversy back in 1976, the abductions George Mario Bergoglio was involved in. Cardinal George Mario Bergoglio was a high-ranking official in the Society of Jesus in Argentina when a military junta was installed in the South American country in 1976. According to the LA Times, priests Orlando Yorio and Francisco Jalix were kidnapped in May of that year by the Navy. They surfaced 5 months later, drugged and semi-nude in a field. There we go. It's all just sounds very ritualistic as part of this Luciferian order. The Times reported a 2005 lawsuit accused Bergoglio of unspecified involvement in the abductions. Reuters explains that military government secretly jailed Yorio and Jalix for their work in poor neighborhoods. A spokesman for Bergoglio called the claims old slander. Yeah, right. He was, of course, the former Archbishop of Buenos Aires, who was elected Pope and was involved in Operation Condor's dirty war in South America. Intimately involved. Product of Chile's DINA secret police and 5 other national security states in Latin America are Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay, where he's going on his little trip right now, going across those areas to spread the New World Order propaganda message. Pope Francis was intimately involved in Operation Condor's dirty war in South America. A product of Chile's DINA secret police and 5 other national security states in Latin America, Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. Interesting, some of the countries he's visiting today, the Pope, or this week. Operation Condor was an intelligence operation designed to monitor, assassinate, and disappear leftist dissidents who threatened the bankster economic operations underway in South America. The brutal dictator of neighboring Chile, General Augusto Pinochet, went so far as to export his murder operation to the United States. On September 21, 1976, a former minister of the Chilean Allende government was overthrown in a CIA-sponsored coup and murdered on the streets of Washington, D.C., along with his aide, Ronnie Moffat. Business Insider mentions an article by Hugh O'Shaughnessy posted on the London Guardian website on January 4, 2011. He takes the Catholic Church to task for the role it played in Operation Condor and ultimately the disappearance and murder of over 30,000 South Americans. He cites Argentine author Horacio Verbitsky, who documented the summary execution of thousands of political dissidents. The preferred method of murder was to push dissidents from an airborne Argentine military plane into the waters of the Rio de la Plata or the Atlantic Ocean. Verbitsky recounts how the Argentine Navy, with the connivance of Cardinal George Bergoglio, who was Pope Francis, and at the time was the Jesuit Archbishop of Buenos Aires, hid from visiting delegations of the Inter-American Human Rights Commission the dictatorship's political prisoners. So he was hiding their prisoners. Bergoglio was hiding them in nothing less than his holiday home in an island called El Silencio. Isn't that interesting? The silence. See this? These people? The Brotherhood of Death. El Silencio in the River Plate. The most shaming thing for the church is that in such circumstances, Bergoglio's name was allowed to go forward in the ballot to choose the successor of Pope John Paul II. Bergoglio headed up the Catholic Church during the successful efforts by the globalists to dismantle Argentina's economy. The country's military dictatorship was supported by Wall Street bankers and David Rockefeller. Quote, one of the key appointments of the military junta on the instructions of Wall Street was the Minister of the Economy, Jose Alfred Martinez de Hoy, a member of Argentina's business establishment and a close friend of David Rockefeller. What a shock, writes Michael Shinovsky. The neoliberal macroeconomically policy change package adopted under Martinez de Haas was a carbon copy of that imposed in October 1973 in Chile by the Pinochet dictatorship under the advice from the Chicago Boys. following the September 11th, 1973 coup d'etat and assassination of President Salvador Allende. How interesting, September 11th, right? Under the helm of Minister of Economy Jose Alfredo Martinez de Hoz, central bank monetary policy was largely determined by Wall Street and the IMF, like it is here now. The currency market was manipulated. The peso was deliberately overvalued, leading to an insurmountable external debt. The entire national economy was precipitated into bankruptcy. The IMF and World Bank wrecking ball accomplished the task in South America with predictable result: massive misery, poverty, malnutrition, and death. Pinochet did not destroy Chile's economy all alone, writes Greg Palast of the disaster that unfolded in Chile. It took 9 years of hard work by the most brilliant minds in the world of academia, a gaggle of Milton Friedman's trainees, the Chicago Boys. Under the spell of their theories, the general abolished the minimum wage, outlawed trade union bargaining rights, privatized the pension system, abolished all taxes on wealth and on business profits, slashed public employment, privatized 212 state industries and 66 banks, and ran a fiscal surplus. How's that? That's pretty good news. Yeah, a lot of information I have on this you can find on howardneiman.com. Also on my blog, truthtalknews.blogspot.com, is an article that was called The Nation Killers. You could Google that too. The Nation Killers. It's a great article. It's got a lot of information. It goes further into how the IMF does this, and they're statistically proven to do this. It's like this is their modus operandi. The Nation Killers and the New World Order Nation Killers, and that's who they are, and that's what they do. And we're next. We're on the chopping block. They're going to bail us out too, right? Like they're bailing out Europe. Yeah. Buy all their bullshit. Buy all their lies. We have to expose these banking criminals for who they are and take back the sovereignty of our nations individually, or they certainly will take everything we have. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, a government big enough and powerful enough to give you everything you want is strong enough to take everything you have.
We'll tell you any shit you want to hear. We deal in illusions, man. None of it is true. But you people sit there day after day, night after night, all ages, colors, creeds. We're all you know. You're beginning to believe the illusions we're spinning here. You're beginning to think that the tube is reality and that your own lives are unreal. You do whatever the tube tells you. You dress like the tube. You eat like the tube. You raise your children like the tube. You even think like the tube. This is mass madness, you maniacs. In God's name, you people are the real thing. We are the illusion.